Good evening, everyone. So today's articles are repetition of the issues that we have discussed in the past. So today we will be looking at this more from a standpoint of how to communicate the same issue rather than summarizing them. Basically, the question here is the issue of governors not giving assent. This issue has been persisting for a very long time, right? What is the context? How do we deal with it? This has been discussed multiple times. Now, in this context, if a question comes, you should have the ability to frame a question first. And you will frame this question based on the patterns that you looked at in the previous year questions. Okay. So, any question on governor can appear in two places. One, role of governor in federalism. What is his role in maintaining the structure of federalism? And two, as a standalone question on the discretionary powers of governor. In both these cases, you can revise the static polity that you read in your Lakshmikant. Okay, powers of governor. So in this context, first thing that you should know is Article 200. Okay. What are the articles? Article 200, 201. What are they talking about? What is the issue? This is the methodology in which you have to break down the issue. I am not repeating this because we have dealt with this issue multiple times in the previous classes. But anyway, quickly summing it up. The due process of law as per our constitutional mechanism is once the respective houses passes the bill as per the nature of the bill, if it is a bill which requires a certain majority, that will be applicable. So anyway, I'm not going to the specifics there. So after the respective houses pass the bill, governor should give an assent or refer it to the president or just sit on that bill without taking an action. These three are provided within the constitution. These three options are provided within the constitution with a certain intent. See, what is the original intent of these options? Why is that discretion given to the governor? One, see, if this is against the ethos of constitution or the federal design, maybe referring it to the president is an opportunity to highlight that this is a potential red flag. That is one issue. Or if you give the assent, normally everything is good. Why is that option of withholding a bill given to the governor? Because maybe an outgoing government is passing a bill in haste, which is qualifying the logic of procedural integrity. But the spirit of the law and the intent behind that can be questioned. Let's say, for example, an outgoing government signed a bill which will pass, some sort of a freebie scheme just before election, even before the model code of conduct is announced. That is a questionable intent. Or anything that is disguised as a welfare scheme. In these cases, maybe the governor can withhold the assent. So these are the various options available, and this is the original intent behind giving these options. What if there is an institutional misuse of this provision? The present case is relevant in that situation. Okay? There is a bill which is correct in its intent, but the governor is not giving the assent. And constitutionally, governor is not obliged to give a reason for or a timeline for withholding that assent, because this is a discretionary power. What is the inherent problem here? One, there is no accountability, and two, there is a principle that is getting violated. That principle is called the doctrine of immediacy. Okay? Principle or doctrine of immediacy. What does this doctrine say? Originally, unless and until there is a very valid reason, it makes no sense to keep a bill pending. Because why will someone procrastinate without a reason? There should be some reason. Constitutionally, you are not obliged to give a reason, nor do you have a time limit within the Constitution. So, at least now the court should come and intervene, right? Why are you delaying this? There is something called jurisprudence in constitutional law. Jurisprudence means the logic or the principles or the body of philosophy that governs the spirit behind these laws. UPSC previously did not ask any questions on jurisprudence aspect. Especially in the last few years, UPSC started asking wherever constitutional posts and fundamental rights, these kind of issues are coming up. Administrative law as well as the constitutional law, whichever items are in news, the jurisprudence of those topics are becoming important. In this case, the principle of immediacy is important for that reason. So what is this principle? Do I have to explain or is it self-explanatory? This principle says that there should be some sense of urgency in matters of public importance or laws, unless and until there is a logic behind delaying an action. This principle is violated in the present situation. So if jurisprudence is a problem because the spirit of the law or the spirit of the constitutional provisions are violated, who should intervene? Obviously the courts, Supreme Court. Therefore, when principles of the Constitution are violated, Supreme Court obviously intervenes, right? This is what happened in the present situation where courts intervened and asked, why are you not taking action? Now, this is interpreted in two ways. One, you can say that this is an issue of judicial overreach and a case of judicial legislation. How can you pass on the bills? Now, it is based on the principle of immediacy, which is a principle of constitutional law and the jurisprudence behind that, and Supreme Court through its essential feature, judicial review or upholding the spirit of the Constitution through this principle, you will have a logic to say that this is acceptable. So this is the context in which Supreme Court intervened, and people are asking, is this a case of judicial legislation or overreach? Nowhere you will see that judiciary is saying that you should have a law. It is not saying that we will create a law. It is suggesting to the parliament that you should come up with a law. Ideally, this is the guideline. So, court can now give either a logic behind coming up with that number, 28 days or 65 days or whatever may be the number that court comes up with. It can give its own justification as a guideline. It is up to the parliament to take that number or not. Because parliament role is to make the law, not judiciary. Another layer is there here. Now, if parliament is not reacting to the situation, can we say that it is a contempt of court? No. Guidelines are just an indication, just like how DPSP is an indication for the government to make a law, even guidelines are indications. But you should better have a very solid reason to not obey the Supreme Court's order. Right. It is a different situation if and when the issue arises. If the Supreme Court comes up and says, why are you not following my order? That is when we can go back and have a even more deeper debate if that is valid or not. At this point of time, here is where we will stop. Clear? Is the issue clear, everybody? Okay. Okay. India needs more women judges in Supreme Court. Is this a ethical issue? Is this a social issue? Is this a legal issue or a constitutional issue? All. Why? Let's see. Women in judiciary. Okay. Let us try to deconstruct this issue into respective subjects and then see how we can combine them through a single lens. GS 1. But you should also know GS 2 and GS 4. Indirectly we will link it to GS 3. Okay. Now let's begin with the GS 2 aspect. Why is judiciary existing? To ensure that you have in your NCERT textbook Gandhi's talisman. What is that Gandhi's talisman? Did anyone read that? Any idea what is Gandhi's talisman? What is the underlying principle? Why should Gandhi's talisman be even considered? Okay. It is a dictum by Gandhi which says that as a state and as a representative of the state, we should act in such a way that our governance mechanisms and the benefits of that system should reach even the poorest of the poor man, or poorest of the poor person rather, to make it gender neutral now. Poorest person, so that the sense of identity, you will link it to yesterday concept, dignity. So Gandhi's talisman is about justice as a tool to ensure dignity, so that they feel a sense of belonging. Okay, this is the overall philosophy. To give a structure and shape to this philosophy, we need a institutional mechanism. That institutional mechanism is where we will divide the state and its organs into parliament, judiciary and executive. Clear? Now, in a representative democracy, no matter which organ or which institution we are talking about, which democratic institution we are talking about, we want to ensure it is representation of various sections of the society is inevitable. Why? Why is representation so important in a democracy? What is the answer? Yes? Equality. Why should we have equality? Peaceful. Exactly. So when you have equality, you will inherently develop a feeling that the system is just. So you will see the institution as a catalyst or as a mechanism to deliver this idea of justice. Clear? Now, what will happen if you create this justice? A peaceful society. So, therefore, we can say that ethics is inherently there in the concept of justice, and this is how you link it to the concept. So, your GS2 is linked to GS4 in this case like this. Clear? Now, when you are talking about the poorest of the poor people, we are also talking about the causes of it. The causes of it will be studied in society. In society, you will be looking at the causes of why these sections are vulnerable. You are addressing the root cause. Root cause. And this root cause you will find where? In the salient features of Indian society. So let's say if you're talking about the salient features of Indian society, one of the salient feature is patriarchy. Okay. Now this patriarchy is going to manifest in every walk of life, whether it is in the parliament, in the judiciary, in the executive, in your workspace, in your personal life, everywhere. So this will create an inherent system where there is inequality, which is antithetical to the conceptualization of right to equality under Article 14. So the cause is there in society, and a solution to that as a matter of philosophy is there in polity. That principle should actually not just exist on paper, but should reflect in the institutions through our actions, and that happens through representation. Clear, everybody? There is a social problem because of how we organize our society, which will be creating inherent inequality. To fix that as a matter of principle, as a matter of rule book, we create constitution. That constitution principle should reflect in institutions at every stage. And the tool to do that is through representation. Why is that? Because it is the way in which you will ensure justice and therefore a peaceful society, which is the ultimate objective of ethics. Why should we be ethical? So that we are all living together in peace. Why should we be acting according to the principles of justice? So that the legal systems, the societies live together in peace. Clear? Now, in this kind of a setup, this is the overall explanation of any vulnerable section and the idea of representation in democracy. I have repeated this idea multiple times, but again in the context, unless and until I force you to think in this direction, it is not a natural reaction. And that is why I come back to the same points again and again. Now that you understood the whole idea behind representation, let me apply the same concept in judiciary. Why should there be women judges in judiciary? Can you give me an argument? Is that argument going to change if I replace judiciary with parliament? Is that argument going to change if I replace parliament with executive? I'll replace with any of this and put women in science, women in any business, women entrepreneurs. Now I will replace women with another vulnerable sections, Dalit entrepreneurs. I will put another vulnerable section, transgenders. Is the logic going to change? The interlinkage between vulnerable sections, the reasons behind that vulnerability will change according to the society. You cannot say the problem, the solution is same, representation is the answer. But if you're talking about migrant labor, there should be labor unions represented in these institutions. GS2 part representation is same, but the reason why that representation is justified is different in society. For labor, it can be because of the inherent structure of our economy and the convergence because of issues like casteism, regionalism, which will create a rural-urban divide. That is also going to be the same. So GS2 and GS4. Now, if women are not represented in judiciary, what will happen? So the overall objective here is gender equality. Why? Because maybe if women are actually a part of that, they will give a new perspective or a new problem statement which nuances men might miss. So it is in this kind of context you should look at the situation that women should participate more in this structure. Not this judiciary, the same logic applies to every institution has a final purpose with which it is existing. And any vulnerable section participating in that institution will only improve the insight that this vulnerable section wants to offer to that institution. And that is the reason why you should have representation. Clear? Same logic applies for you remove this women, you replace this women with any other vulnerable section. Any other vulnerable section. And remove this institution, Supreme Court, with Parliament, with executive, with jobs, with science, in gig economy, in any activity. The logic and the argument are not going to change. The GS2 and the GS4 aspects are not going to change. Maybe the case laws will change according to the situation, but the structure will remain intact. Clear? Moving ahead. The Supreme Court to the soldier's rescue. So this question is about the quality of democracy and the lawmaking in our country. It is about governance. It is about the role of institutions. So whatever we are going to discuss here will be important for substantiating our points in both GS2 and GS4. So let me take some time to explain these issues. Otherwise, there are not a lot of issues today. Now, Supreme Court to the soldier's rescue. Let me explain what happened here. I'll give you the situation. I want your participation. You tell me. Let's say Indian Army recruits a soldier. I am not asking for any information. I am just applying to your conscience and logic. So depending on that, we will have an answer. Indian Army recruited a soldier. Now, in the line of duty, this soldier is injured, and this injury has caused a permanent disability. Okay? If this soldier was sound and alive, or not, he was not injured and he was not having any physical disability, and he completed his service, what is the actual thing that will happen after his service? He will get the tag of ex-serviceman, and he will avail some benefits of social security from the government. Let me ask communication. I am asking you a justification. Why? Why do you think? Okay. So, okay. I mean, I will listen to your perspectives before giving an answer. Come up with an answer, because this is not rocket science. This is not information. It is pure common sense and articulation. So try. It's okay to write a wrong answer, but try. Yes. One after the other. We'll come to everyone. Means. Okay. Means to an end. Fine. You used a phrase, but what is this end? Exactly. Coming back to the same topic. Living a dignified life. Now, I'll ask another question. What is this dignified life? Potential. Dignity is when you have a choice and you exercise that choice to reach whatever is the maximum 100% potential that you decide for yourself without harming others. Okay? Within the reasonable restrictions that a state imposes, you are willing to exercise your potential. You have that choice. Yes, a soldier is bound by national duty, and yes, job becomes a major part of their identity because of the importance associated with it, and they are consciously willing to be subjugated by the state. They are exercising their choice. According to them, they came into the service with a belief that they are exercising their 100% potential. But maybe due to unforeseen circumstances, this kind of a situation arose. Now, do you think any person would anticipate this even when they know it's a possibility? And yet they are taking this risk. And that risk is a unquantifiable sacrifice. So, in the absence of a dignified life, when your intent is belittled, when you do something with a hope that it will be appreciated, maybe a soldier's job is a thankless job. You put all your heart out there with an intent to serve the nation or to serve a need, and you believe that you did everything that is possible out there to serve this nation, but the reciprocation is very cold. How would you feel about it? What would you